Well, hello again. Welcome to Horror in Detail. Today we are going to share 3 new Wendigo encounter stories. First story. This story was shared by you/Chillinangodzillan, so credits to him. Wendigo encounter. Hi, so this is my first post on Reddit. I just wanted to share this story and see if something like this has ever happened to anyone else. Just to start off with some backstory. My group of friends had started making a nasty habit of joking about the Wendigo. My friend Stacy and me didn't for a while just due to the fact we believed in the supernatural, but after a few months it grew on us, and not knowing that the Wendigo can actually be triggered by such things, we joined in. Biggest mistake ever. I had just moved into the country, and we enjoyed making trips into town to have a few drinks, which is about a 30-minute walk from my place to town. At night, the first 10 minutes after leaving the bridge that leads out of town is pitch darkness with no streetlights. After that, streetlights are very sparsely places, which can cause for a very creepy walk back without anything happening. So with that all in place, let's continue. Stacy and I begin our night, walking into town. Get some beers. And have some fun. Shortly into the night, something slightly strange happens. We receive a phone call from her little sister at home, crying and scared because she saw someone sitting on my friend Stacy's bed. She calms her sister down and asks her cousin to check her room for her sister at home. Everything is fine. No one's in the room. Also, ghosts and weird things happening at her house were very common, so a sighting like this was strangely regular. We continue our night. Into the night we meet a guy who seems pretty cool. He's riding a bike and tells us he's pretty drunk or something. We decide to hang with him for a bit, wanting to meet people in town. A ways into our hangout, we are sitting on a park bench and the guy is laying on the ground in front of us. Suddenly my friend stands up and says it's time for us to go. I shrug and agree, and we get going. After getting away from him, she tells me how the guy bit her ankle the day after she had teeth bruises on her ankle. Kind of flustered the guy would do that, we continue our walk out of town. Finally we pass the bridge, which is our last source of light for the next 10 minutes. We turn on our phone flashlights, and we turn on some music, trying to ease the spooky feeling of being in pitch darkness in the middle of nowhere. Suddenly we hear a voice beside us. We both jump. It's the same guy on his bike. He asks us if he can follow us until we reach the fork in the road. We need to go left and he needs to go right. Still slightly creeped out, but almost at the street lights and the fork in the road, we agree. Regardless, he had to go that way and so did we. After a bit of walking we finally reached the fork in the road, and the first street light. We sigh with relief, hoping he would leave. But he turns down our way instead of going the way he needs to go. Now at this point we are thoroughly creeped out. We try to ignore it and keep walking, holding our breaths, wanting to reach the next street light, which is some ways away. Finally, after what felt like forever, we reach the next street light, which is also for some reason a small graveyard. I hate my area. Once we reach the street light, the guy stops dead in his tracks and doesn't move any further past it. As we turn around, the guy looks like he has suddenly passed out on his bike, his head down and shoulders slumped. I was about to say something to him, but my friend stopped me and said we really needed to leave him. I agreed, not wanting to be around him much longer either. After a few seconds I take a peek over my shoulder. He's gone, vanished. The worst part is, even if he had turned around and started pedaling as fast as he could, we still would have been able to see him some ways down the road. I panicked, but also slightly relieved he wasn't there anymore. We continue walking, trying to pretend we aren't creeped out. walking quickly from street light to street light. Finally we reach my driveway. My driveway is a long road of darkness. We hadn't put any lights in yet to try and brighten it. We began to walk slowly, holding our breath, some weird feeling of dread coming over me the closer and closer we got to my house and the further into the driveway we entered. I don't know what came over us, but the sudden feeling of, you need to run. And you need to run fast, came over us at the same time. We took of bolting at the exact same time without having to say a word to each other. We got to my front door. I unlocked it quicker than I ever have before. We get inside. Just as I'm about to close the door, this hellish scream or growl, whatever the sound is, come out of nowhere. I could hear it getting close to the door and steps. I slammed the door closed, and locked it, and dropping to the ground in fear. We both sat there holding our breath, scared to even breathe. Fast forward a couple weeks, me and my Stacy had forgotten about what happened. Suddenly it came up in convo and we tried to find the sound we heard. Nothing worked. We looked up every possible animal, even animals that weren't likely. We spent an hour on this, until we decided to look up the sound of a Wendigo. It was the only sound that fit perfectly. We don't joke or talk about it now. I won't. I hate to. Even writing this post made me feel scared to bring it up. Second story. This story was shared by you/WithyWoodwitch, so credits to him. I live on a farm that is still very much in tune with its pagan origins, and I would like to share some of my stories. This is all related to British folklore, more specifically the house I grew up in the southwest of England. There will be no skinwalkers, no Wendigo, or anything of that ilk. But I think my pagan ancestors had enough to worry about without those. Some of you may be unfamiliar with British folklore, so if I had to start anywhere I would start with stones. Stones and circles have always had an intimate relationship. Whether it is a circle made of stones, or a stone with a circular hole in it, it represents power. When I was a child I was fascinated by both. There were stone circles on the land I grew up on. Most of the stones had fallen over the centuries, but the power was still there. I found that out against my will. My name, for the purposes of this story, is Chloe, and I'd like to tell you about my family home. Growing up on a farm can be dangerous for a child, but aside from all the practical ones, I had extra dangers to consider. Our land was old, passed down through generations, and, if my father was to be believed, sat on the crossroads of ley lines. Whether you believe in ley lines or not, it was a powerful place, and there were all kinds of things I had to be careful of. We had rules, and these were added to over the years. The main ones were, don't mess around with the stones. Keep away from the footprint. Don't go into the corpse at the edge of the land alone. If you had to go into the old stable, avoid the third stall, and don't look into it if you hear any noises. And always look at the window. There is so much to tell, I honestly don't know where to start. The farmhouse was old. Ancient, even. It was listed in the Doomsday Book, and whilst a lot of it had been rebuilt or renovated, the core still remained. And being an old house, you would naturally expect it to be haunted. It was, of course, haunted as hell. But the ghosts, or spirits, were the least of the energy there. The house itself always seemed like some kind of living entity, the wood floors and stone walls having absorbed so much history they could barely contain it. There were births and deaths, fires, murders, curses, blessings, reverence and blasphemy. And make no mistake, although there was Christian imagery throughout the house, it was pagan at its heart. The blasphemy there came from disrespecting the old ways. At some point in its history, an ancestor had tried to placate the Christian God by placing a stained glass window at the foot of the main stairs. But it had backfired terribly. It was intended to be a pastoral scene of a shepherd, probably Jesus, tending to his flock, but the house was stronger than any Christian imagery. Over the centuries it had become part of the lore of the land, and I had learned to look at it, as a kind of divination device, every time I came down the stairs. Some days the main figure was larger than the scenery, his face changing mood by the hour. He could look happy or angry or sad or peaceful, depending on the angle of the light and the height of the sun. If it was wet, a raindrop might cling to the opposite side of the window, warping his features or making them utterly blank. The sky behind him could be a mellow yellow, or a rosy pink, or a bloody red, or a grim gray. The sheep in the field could be sheep, or they could be deformed creatures that walked on two legs, or vague shadows of a disconcerting nature, the shape of which could never be defined. I learned to read the window, as if it were a tarot card, and it was very much an instinctual thing. It was a barometer for the mood of the house. But I started off telling you about the stones, so I will concentrate on those for now. They were once standing stones, but over the centuries they fell or sank, although their formation maintained a rough circle. There were many of them, placed by some ancient map, but the ones nearer the house were the ones I paid more notice to. I had grown up with them, after all. One of my earliest memories was watching my father work in the fields. It was a sunny day and he had brought me along whilst he mended a fence, no doubt to give my mother a rest. He had told me to keep away from the stones, of course, but what better way to rouse a child's natural curiosity than to tell them to keep away from something? He was busy, his back turned to me, and I went to investigate the forbidden stones. They were old and weathered, overgrown by moss in places, but where the white stone was exposed was smoothed by the wind and warmed by the sun. They were arranged in a ragged circle, some of them upright, most of them fallen, and I climbed onto one of the fallen ones. I don't remember feeling like there was anything wrong about sitting on the stone. It gave off no vibrations or anything of the kind, and to me it was simply a nice place to sit on a sunny day. I grew bored, however, just sitting, and started to poke at a patch of moss next to me. It was easy enough to pry off with my fingers and I spent a diverting few minutes peeling it away. As I worked, I noticed there was something beneath the dirt that remained after the moss was gone, some sort of carving, and this increased my interest. I brushed the dirt away with my equally grubby hand and saw a symbol. It looked familiar to me, although I couldn't remember where I'd seen it. Completely enthralled now, I started to trace the odd design with a finger, only for a shadow to fall across me. My father's hand appeared, big and rough, and snatched my own hand away. I remember the moment with perfect clarity, the drone of insects, the singing of birds carrying on as if it were a normal day, the sinking feeling a child gets when they know they have been caught doing something they shouldn't have. I looked up into his face. The sun was reflecting off his glasses, creating two blazing panels of a light where his eyes should be, and for a moment he seemed like something other, not a man at all. "Did you trace all of it, Chloe?" he demanded. I didn't answer. I couldn't tell if he was angry or afraid, and I don't know which possibility scared me more. He picked me up under my arms and lifted me from the stone, setting me on my feet and bending down to look me in the face. Without the sun in his eyes, I could see him properly. He looked human again, my father again. He'd had more hair then, and his sweaty fringe hung over his forehead. He looked hot and tired and worried, and my heart sank even further. "Answer me, love. Did you trace all of the funny picture?" He was trying to smile, but his mouth twitched at the corners, and when I shook my head no, he sagged in relief. "Told you to keep away from those stones," he chided me, but it wasn't a proper scolding. He was too relieved. And seeing that false smile transform into a real one was the reason I never told him the truth, that, honestly, I didn't know if I had completed tracing the design or not. His work done, he carried me back to the house, bouncing me on his arm and singing a silly song, and I was happy for a moment. Just for that moment. Because everything was perfect then. Right up until my mother met us at the door, her face grim, a blood-soaked towel held in her hands. Nobody ever blamed me for the dog being hit by the car, but I blamed myself. In my child's mind, I made a connection between the thing I had done that had scared my father so much and the death of poor Rowan in the driveway. I felt like it was my fault. Now that I am older, of course, I don't feel that. I know it was my fault. The stones were something I was warned about from the moment I was able to understand what I was being told, but there were other things I was cautioned about too. The withered patch of land in the old paddock was another area of concern. The stones had never given me any bad vibes before the day I caused our dog to die by my actions, but the withered patch was a different story. I didn't need to be told to keep away from that. It was an area of land in a round circle about 10 feet across. Grass grew there, but it was straggly and had a singed look to it that was somehow different from the old burned scars around the barn. Like the fire had come from deep down under it rather than on the surface. Officially, the older people had always called it the Devil's Footprint, and although my father had always scoffed at the name, it was a handy moniker to refer to it by. The story was that the land had been cursed when Lucifer fell. He had been battling God and one hoof touched the earth as he tried to push himself back up to heaven. Bollocks, my father said, often. That mark is older than any bloody Christian ideology. And everyone knows the devil is meant to have a cloven hoof. I agreed. I was a farm child. I knew what print a cloven hoof made, and it didn't look anything like that patch of land. But whether it was to do with Satan or not, the footprint scared me and fascinated me in equal measure. Like my father, I had no belief that the devil had made it, but the very idea that something might have a foot that large and walk the earth took hold of my imagination. I dreamed about it, once. I dreamed I was standing by the fence, looking at the footprint as I sometimes did, feeling the strange prickling on my skin it always gave me when I got close enough. The air was still, no birds, no insects. No sound of cars from the road, no aeroplanes flying overhead. And beneath my feet, the ground began to shake. Small tremors at first, getting stronger and harder in a rhythmic pulse, and I kept looking at the footprint because I knew something was coming and I did not want to see it. I knew the sight of it might make me insane. Trees broke, the crackling they made as they snapped insignificant against the monstrous thuds of whatever was coming. The sun went dim as the thing blotted it out, turning day into night, and in the shadow it cast I could see my breath misting in the air. I closed my eyes. It was no good merely looking away, the thing was colossal, taking up most of the landscape and I would not avoid seeing it. I saw it in my mind though, a vision it had selfishly put in there. Something huge and ancient that I couldn't quite comprehend, walking upright, antlers scraping the sky. It smelled like freshly dug earth, and tree sap, and a thick musk that was more animal than human, more monstrous than animal. I felt it bend down to look at me, the rush of air as it was displaced by the massive bulk nearly pushing me off my feet, but I was stubborn. I stayed standing, my eyes remained closed. Its breath gusted out, so hot it seared the skin that had been so chilled moments ago, and although I could close my eyes I couldn't close my ears. If it spoke I knew it would deafen me, burst my eardrums, scramble my brain. I woke up before it spoke, still in the grip of my nightmare. At some point during the dream I had wet the bed, recently, judging by how hot it was on my legs, and I was too overcome to let out the scream that was trapped in my throat. I understood that I had encountered some entity that no human being should ever meet, and I was glad I had kept my eyes closed. I sat up, meaning to pull the wet sheets away from my legs. I planned to launder the sheets and my nightdress to avoid any embarrassment, but what I saw wiped all thoughts of embarrassment from my mind. Because I wasn't in bed. I was lying on grass, and a quick look around me confirmed that I was beside the old paddock, the footprint only a few yards away beyond the rickety fence. If I hadn't already emptied my bladder I would have wet myself again. I had never sleepwalked before, and I don't think I have done since. I ran back to the house, wet nightdress slapping against my legs and dry grass pickling at my feet, only to find the doors and windows all shut and locked. I woke my parents hammering at the door in near hysterics, terrified that the thing I had encountered was going to come back. To this day we don't know how I got out there, or why one side of my face was bright red as if it had been scalded by hot water. We don't talk about the incident much, and I can't remember it without being drenched in cold sweat. Even writing this has brought on a low-level panic attack and it's taken several breaks before I could complete it. There are more stories I can tell you about the footprint, or the stones, or the house, if you wish. About Uncle Pete, and his disappearance. His reappearance too. It is all tied into the land. And the stories are endless. Third story. This story was shared by you/jokes0nme, so credits to him. Wendigo Encounter. So I don't really know how to start this, so I'm just gonna spew out some stuff and hope it all makes sense, because it sure as hell doesn't to me. Have any of you even encountered one before? If not, let me tell, these things are not like how Google or any of pictures you find depicts them, at least not right away. Let's get into it. I'm from Canada and I live on a reserve that's about 30 minutes from any town, relatively close compared to other places I've been. Well, it's the end of December and just getting finished with holidays and spending it relatively alone, thanks to COVID. I get a call from one of my friends. He wants to go hunting. Well, that's kind of a problem, cause I've never shot a gun or went hunting before. Pretty pathetic for a Native American if you ask me, but anyways, he tells me he just needs my eyes and another set of legs to help carry whatever he catches. So I agree, making one of the biggest mistakes I would come to regret. So he picks me up in his crappy old Ford truck he uses for hunting, tells me we are going deep into the bush and we'll find a spot to camp along the way. So we drive about 20 minutes into the woods following what little road is left, and we get to a point where we have to continue on foot. We unload our gear and supplies and carry it till we find a nice clearing with room for everything. After we set up camp, we begin our trek into the woods, going farther than I had gone before. Saw a couple of bucks and rabbits, nothing too spectacular, so we keep looking cause he wants the big daddy buck, and we come to this other clearing much larger than the one we are camping at, and something about this part of the woods just feels off. It had a heavy feeling to, like the air was thick and just had a disorienting aura about this place. But we hadn't caught anything yet and we're getting hungry, so we spot a rabbit in the middle of this clearing. Buddy lines up the shot and bam, we have dinner, so being the one without the gun I go to get our little dinner in the middle of this clearing and I notice something odd that it's a perfect circle, no tree stumps, no sign that any human had made this gigantic circle. I also happen to notice what look like claw marks on the trees surrounding the area. Buddy said it's from bears sharpening their claws and marking territory, but the marks were so deep into the trees it seemed off. Anyways, it's dark out now and we are back at our campsite eating and talking about how crazy this pandemic shit is. I also brought up the clearing we were at and how weird it felt to me. I wanted to know if he felt like that too or if I was just exaggerating. My anxiety makes me do that sometimes. To which he said, yeah, he noticed the change in the air too and said it made him feel dizzy and worn out, but he also said it just could have been from the long day we had. So on that note it was time for bed. We both slept in same tent. It's the middle of winter and bundling up can only do so much, plus he was like a brother to me, so not a big deal. It had to be around 1 a.m. when we both woke up to sound of the most horrible scream I'd ever heard. What that fuck was that, was my first though. I'm guessing my friend was thinking the thing as he looked at me with fear on his face. I know because I was afraid too. So he grabs his gun, loads around, and we just sit there for a while and listen. Now I know my friend is at least safe, he's got a gun, but I have nothing. Fear and my anxiety start getting the better of me, so I ask, where's the hatchet we used to split wood? Out there by the fire, he said, so I tell him I'm gonna open the tent, grab the hatchet, and when I jump in you seal the thing back up. I open the tent and as fast as I can bolt out to grab that hatchet. As I go to turn around with hatchet in hand, I'm quickly greeted by my friend shoving me down by the back of my neck. He put his finger up to his mouth to tell me to be quiet and we listen. In the distance I can hear the slow sound of crunching snow and a faint high-pitched guttural growl. Now I'm in full panic mode. We don't even have to say anything to each cause we both know our hunting trip was over and it was time to leave. All we had to do was make it to the truck. In the dead of night, it sounded so easy. But it was not, and I knew that from the moment my friend said, I'm going to fire a warning shot, but before I could even open my mouth to tell him, no, it was too late. The shot rang in the distance and for a moment there was silence. Then we heard it, a scream so soul-piercing it felt like it lasted forever. It definitely echoed much further than this gunshot did. It was petrifying. I'd never heard such a haunting scream before that I was literally frozen in fear. Then we could hear whatever made this scream was charging right for us, with the sound of crunching snow getting closer and closer. We looked at each other and just ran in the direction of the truck, frantically sprinting, calling out to each other to make sure the other hadn't fallen behind. We're almost there, we kept telling each other as we are weaving through trees, making a beeline to the truck, trying to ignore the sound of this growl that sounds like it's right in my ear. But I can see the truck, we're gonna make it, we're getting out of here. As we come up to the truck, my friend makes it to his side and unlocks both passenger and driver side at the same time. As I open the door he does too at the same time, and then he's gone in a flash of white. This thing had gotten him, ran at him with such force that when it tackled him it shook the truck side to side. I stood there in shock. I call out to him, but all I can hear are screams and a couple gunshots and then dead silence again. I know in my heart that my friend is dead, and so am I if I don't get the fuck out of here. I go over to the driver's side and find the keys on the ground. He must have let them go when he got tackled. I hop and start the damn thing, whip it around in the direction I needed to get out of here. Then I saw it. Skin as white as snow, completely hairless, eyes that had sunken into its head made dark circles around eyes that were just as white as its skin, no nose, teeth so jagged and sharp shined with the color of blood, and its lips looked like they had been chewed off, so all you're staring at is teeth. Its body was so disproportioned, but with long lanky limbs. This thing is blocking me from leaving, but I'm getting out of here no matter what. I floor it with the tires spinning. I shoot forward and so does it, screaming that blood-curdling scream as it charges at me. Now I'm getting up close and personal as this thing lunges at the truck and bounces off the hood and over top of the truck. As I am speeding away, I glance at the rear-view mirror and witness this thing get up and just stand there watching me drive off with its head tilted slightly. I knew I had just escaped death with the price of losing my friend. Thanks a lot for watching the video till the end. Subscribe to our channel Horror in Detail. Drop your opinions/suggestions in the comments section, and like the video as it helps with the YouTube algorithm.